Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Jane Marie Aure from in the Lansing, Michigan area. I can't read my notes. I got to pick this up. She is a psychological writer. Her book, Screens and the Ego, a meditation on Gen Z, is available wherever books are sold, but also at janemarieaure.com, and that will be spelled out in the description below. Her book has been well received by New York Times best-selling authors, so that's some high praise from people who know what they're doing. For my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers. If you have a dream, I want to talk to you. You don't have to be an author with a book to sell. That's perfectly fine. Very happy to talk to my internet friends. For my part, I also have books for sale. 17 currently available works of historical dream literature. The most recent, The Fabric of Dreams by Catherine Taylor Craig, lovingly reproduced, recreated, and enhanced by yours truly, if I do say so myself. All this and more, of course, at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, including downloadable MP3 versions of these very dream interpretation interviews. If you would also head on over to benjaminthedreamwizard.locals.com. It's where I'm trying to build a community. That's where I would love to receive sustaining donations or receive communications from the members there about their own dreams and being a guest on the show. What else do I usually say? Oh, it's free to join, attached to my Rumble account, and that's enough about me. Jane Marie, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I also appreciate your time. This will be fun.
Wonderful. It is too. So let's jump right into it and talk about your book. What is it about? How did you decide it needed to be written? All that good stuff.
So it's a series of short stories, some of which are true and some of which are fictional, that take you through the ways that I have grounded myself mentally. Basically, I received really bad therapy, and I was really disassociated from my own understanding of who I am, and I didn't have a good understanding of like what I should do with my life, or what what any like human purpose really is at all. And I don't know. I just didn't have a genuine feeling of self-respect, and for a long time I thought that I was gonna. So the first thing that I was really good at, like as an adult, was interpreting literature and learning to read books in foreign languages. Right. So when I was at Emory, I studied Arabic literature, Arabic language and comparative literature. But basically, I read a bunch of books that were in a really different cultural context, right? And the main way that you interpret literature is you connect yourself emotionally to the character and then try to find some sort of like critical growth that the character has gone through that you can relate to your own life, and thereby expand your human experience, right? So that's kind of the value of reading literature. And as you get farther and farther away from your own experiences and read literature that's like, Viking era literature or whatever it is, as you diverge farther and farther from your own personal experiences, you have to challenge yourself about how you're going to emotionally connect with the character that you're reading about. And that's the reason that I like Complet as opposed to just English. And I was really good at it for a really long time. And I thought that I was going to get a PhD in this stuff, but unfortunately I was not capable of making relationships with my professors that like got me good letters of recommendations. And I had so many dysfunctional relationships in college, and I didn't understand because at a certain point, if you have a certain number of dysfunctional relationships, you're the asshole, not the other people, right? Yeah. But and I was aware of that, right? Like, I'm not above criticizing myself, especially not by the time I was 22. Maybe I didn't criticize myself when I was 19. By the time I was 22, I was like, okay, like the propensity for relationships to fail is greater than what you should, I need to start taking responsibility for it. But the thing is that I analyzed all my relationships and ruminated on them over and over again, and I could not find any common behaviors or things that cause these relationships to go awry, right? And so I graduated in 2020, and I didn't have anyone who really was going to propel me into into the type of program that I wanted. So I ended up pulling out my PhD apps when I was 22, and I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do with my life now? Like first of all, I got a completely useless degree. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea what I'm good at, and I really need to start figuring things out. So I got a job at the Amazon warehouse because I needed money. And then I enrolled in a Master's of Finance program, which was a terrible idea because I am bad at finance and I don't care about it. But I did get the degree. And then three, when I decided that I didn't like either of those, I started working at a home for teenage female wards of the state whose behavior was too extreme for foster care placement. And I'm not sure, you said that you were a psychologist, you were practicing psychologist for a little while?
Broadly working in the psychiatric industry. So I am not a licensed clinical counselor. I don't have a master's degree. I've got my bachelor's, but I did a stint at in adolescent psych as well. And burnout is extreme in those. I made it, the average is 6-7 months, and I made it 2 years before I was like, I got to pull the ripcord. It's extremely difficult, firsthand.
Yeah, I do. And I figured that you also had that. Yeah, it sucks. It's terrible. I did go in thinking that I didn't expect to immediately have a messianic impact, but I thought that maybe I would be able to have some good stories from it. But really, the level of psychiatric trauma that we were dealing with, so something happened to a child which caused them to be taken away from their parents, and then they were put in a foster care home, and then the foster care family said this child's behavior is endangering the other kids in the home or is so far beyond what I can do that they need extra support. And then they go into this home and they have zero power over their lives and zero understanding of who they are. And it's just a bunch of females. It was really bad. It was really, really bad. I broke up multiple fist fights.
Yeah.
But the point of me saying this is that I was bouncing between really extreme jobs, and then I had this job at the youth home, and the girls who were in the youth home had access to therapy, what we considered therapy, every single day. Every single day we were doing activities with them, write 10 things that you like about yourself that aren't related to your appearance or whatever it is. We would do these activities all the time. They brought in licensed therapists all the time. And I saw zero improvement in terms of general sense of self-respect and behavior the entire time I was there. None. Yeah. And at a certain point I was like, okay, well, clearly these methods are ineffective, right? I get on the one hand, you can't really improve your own internal life unless you want to, right? So there has to be some participation from the patients. But on the other hand, the levels of recidivism versus rehabilitation are so piss poor that I don't know why we're doing this at all. So, and then at the same time, I was having really bad experiences with my own therapist. And then I stopped going to therapy, right? So the reason that I wrote my book, Screens and the Ego, A Meditation on Gen Z, is because I had to process my own feelings. And the basic way that I did that is there's an entire methodology to this book. And it sounds... It really should be experienced as a piece of artwork before I tell you the philosophy behind it.
Sure.
But the basic thing is that I had a real problem with flashbacks. That was a real issue for me. So the way that I dealt with flashbacks is I held the image of the flashback in my head until I could separate the emotions from the image, and then I turned the image into a black and white image until I could fold it up like a piece of paper and throw it away. And just learning how to stare at my own memories was one of the ways that I've been able to feel empowered over everything that's ever happened in my life that's bad or good, or anything that someone did to hurt me or anything I did to hurt someone else. And then it kind of, talks about hey, why is it that human beings have been experiencing terrible crap for like, since the dawn of humanity, but the psychological crisis is happening right now. And, how much of this is manufactured by people obsessing over their emotions. And, before human beings had Freudian psychoanalysis and vocabulary to talk about their own internal lives, they were using the word soul, right? And they were discussing their internal lives in a religious context, right? And what have we lost by stripping the idea of emotions from the original conception of the soul and the way that people have been talking about that for however many thousands of years? So
I actually wrote that down too as like a kind of a talking point to come back to. But so it's a great place to start. I mean,
Sure.
before the invention of psychology, what we had was other cultural methods. Sometimes it would be speaking to the village elders. You would take your problems to them, and they were the older, wiser people, and they would know, and they would try to help you sort through things. It was kind of their role. But also, broadly speaking, this was a question for spirituality or religion. What is my purpose for being here? How do I do the right thing, assuming I care? What is the proper way to navigate certain struggles and difficulties successfully? So psychology has often been described as secular confession. Like the history of going to a priest and confessing your sins.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Secular what?
Oh, secular confession. Like you go to a priest and confess your sins, and it's like, here's all the ways I fail. I think I failed according to the rules of the doctrine, and they would assign. They would receive that, listen. They would do the listening part of engaging in a therapeutic and therapeutic relationship can happen outside of a clinical counseling setting. We have therapeutic relationships with everybody all the time, and non-therapeutic and traumatic relationships too. But so you don't have to be formally trained to be a good person, to listen to someone and help them talk through their problems. It just formalizes that process and tries to scientifically say, well, this method's better than that method. Different schools of thought. Long story short, you'd go to a priest back in the day and you'd say, here's all the ways I think I am screwing up my own life. And the priest would say, yeah, it's a problem. Do you want to do something about it? And then you talk about how to make it better. They give you acts of contrition. Sometimes it's Hail Mary. Sometimes they say, you got to go repair that relationship with someone. You go tell them you made a mistake and you would like them to forgive you, and see if that works. And very often it does. Sometimes the other person's a sociopath. It doesn't work out so well. And you are actually not the injured, you are the injured party, not them. These things happen. But I'll just pause there and throw it back to you in terms of the spiritual psychological bridge.
Yeah, I think that the idea of psychology is secular confession. Say it one more time. That was a brilliant line.
Oh, thank you. I stole it from somebody else. I can't remember who, but the therapeutic relationship with the counselor has been conceptualized as basically secular confession, just secular, just taking God out of it and saying, okay, well, this is science, so we're gonna go to a doctor and do it with Dr. Freud or Dr. Jung, those kind of things. Right. Yeah.
Right.
I'm happy to pass that along. I don't want to claim credit for the phrase, though.
Okay. Yeah, it's a super insightful phrase. So what I would say is that, at least when you're talking about the Abrahamic faiths, the major relationship between your soul and God is that if God cares about how you behave and how you decide to behave. And if you decide to behave rightly, then you will be aligned with what God wants, right? And that's kind of like the major story about like starting with the Torah and going through whatever. It's true of Islam as well. Islam actually has a much more like transactional understanding of good behavior and bad behavior. There's a big thing about like weighing the scales of your good deeds versus your bad deeds, and they have like different levels of heaven. You can like live in the suburbs or the city center of heaven depending on how good you are. But that aside, the basic idea that your soul is aligned according to right action has kind of gotten dropped as you talk about psychology. And I think in particular, with the way that psychological concepts have been I have 2 points to make on this, okay?
Sure.
And I'm going to start with one, and then I'm going to go back to the other. So the first one is that for the vast majority of problems in society, poor people have it worse, right? This is almost always true. Poor people have it worse. Poor people have higher rates of alcoholism and higher rates of getting into fistfights and higher rates of whatever, right? The lower the socioeconomic status, the higher rate of any destructive behavior, except for like right now, the rates of people who have depression and anxiety and ADHD and these like not like severe as in like schizophrenia type mental illnesses, but like the mental illnesses that on a scale are considered less severe, those are predominantly upper class issues.
Yeah.
And that's a very weird reversal of the like basic trend, right? And the only historical precedent that I've ever heard for that trend is that before the French Revolution, but during the time when like the French aristocracy had a tremendous amount of wealth, right? They had already like colonized and like reaped the benefits of it, like Louis XIV, like Sun King era. All of the super wealthy people in France started talking about this thing called ennui, which was like a weird feeling of purposelessness to life, the inability to enjoy things. And like it was associated with the upper class who had everything, and it's like while other people were living in basically like one step away from starvation state, these people were experiencing like a general disassociation from purpose and meaning.
Yeah. Not to sidetrack you, but to add to what you're saying, that was about the time that they were talking about or discovered gout. And it was considered, a rich man's disease, is like because you had such a sedentary, luxurious lifestyle with rich foods, you would, get gout. And like poor people who were active and ate less and worked more did not have that same medical problems, less prevalent in a different class of persons. Just to add to your point in that regard, yeah.
Really, I didn't know that that's when gout was discovered, but yeah, that's exactly the trend, right? So it's interesting that like a lot of the psychological problems that like contemporary 2020s Americans are experiencing are exacerbated in upper classes, right? And then my second point was talking about God and mental health, right? So as you take a human from using type language to talk about what they're going through, like, oh, I feel grief, I feel sorrow, I feel shame, or whatever, right? Those are words that have a religious connotation that indicate that something morally transgressive has been done to cause these issues, right?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times when people feel depression, they are feeling a subset of grief or sorrow or shame or guilt, but they don't have the implication of depression is that it's like medical, like oh, you should be operating at this level, but something's wrong and you're operating at this level and you need to go to a doctor to get it fixed, right? And I think that when misapplied, and it's almost always misapplied, like the number of times that like people use the word depression versus the amount of people who just like have like a pathological feeling of sadness that can't be explained, is not like there's so many people who really need to think about, okay, like why am I depressed, right? And that's really why I like the idea of interpreting dreams in the first place, and why I read Freud's on the interpretation of dreams, because in the instance that you can't point to any like logical reason why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, sometimes dreams can help you understand that underlying association about why you're not feeling as well as you could. So
I believe it 100%. Yeah.
Right.
Or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And a lot of people, Freud's been much maligned, I would say, fairly and unfairly. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and sometimes it's a penis. So a lot of his conceptions, I like the idea that you can take, say, great men throughout history or whatever, people, movers and shakers that have done things, and not everything they said is going to be correct. he had some ideas that I don't think were have proven to be true as time has gone on, but like the core of it, genius. And even if he wasn't right about exactly, just his quotes, the dreams being the royal road to the unconscious. It's like our primary mode of being able to access that vast pool of every experience and thought and emotion we've ever had, and trying to make some kind of sense of it and bring it back up to the surface. It's something we don't have the best access to while we're awake and conscious and focused and busy and doing all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of, so just my 2 cents on dreams and Freud. Yeah.
No, I agree. I also have mixed feelings on Freud. On the one hand, I like him, and on the other hand, I don't like him. One thing that I will say is that in practice, 100 years after the writings of Freud, when you go to a therapist right now, the main thing that they'll do with you, or the main thing that multiple therapists have done with me and like everyone I know, is they will take you to your early childhood experiences, and they will attribute nearly every like destructive behavior you have as an adult to something that happened in your childhood.
Sometimes
right?
yes, sometimes no.
Yeah. Sometimes, the point is that
but it's not always yes.
Trained in psychoanalysis. Yeah, it's not always yes, right? Well, the thing is that even if it is correct, even it is traceable to your early childhood, like how does that help anyone? Like what are you going to do about that? Like there's nothing actionable to like go on. It's just like you've just like basically paid someone to help you hate your parents. And by the way, like parents are so nice. Like in terms of like the history of like parents and their relationship with their children, like since the popularization of Freud, like the entire like dynamic of like kids being special and stuff has changed. And I think that that's primarily because Freud has entered the consciousness of like the entire society, and people are like, oh, I don't want to mess up my kids, which is not something that people cared about like ever before. And it's certainly not something that people care about outside of the modern West. Like, oh, I'm going to mess up my kids.
And we've got a bit of a pendulum with that too. And like at one point kids were, should be seen and not heard, and you beat them when they acted up because that's how they learn. And they were just tiny little defective adults that were ignorant and had to be educated. And we got the idea of cramming stuff into their heads instead of drawing out natural talents and providing information. It swung back and forth, but I think we're definitely, and this is one thing I was going to talk about too. Me being Gen X and you being Gen Z, there's a difference in our understanding of the world, of the current zeitgeist of the era we're in terms of psychology and politics, and it's been different between the two of them. And I think right now we've probably swung too far into sparing the rod and spoiling the child in that regard. There's a bit too much. We went through generations of helicopter parenting and over-involved parenting, and now we're kind of getting the idea that, wait a minute, it's setting aside political stuff, so to speak, but Jordan Peterson put in his book, when kids are skateboarding, leave them alone. And his point, his point in that was kids need unstructured, unsupervised playtime with their peers to learn how to be social creatures. And and we went through, and see, this is a big thing too. So going back to the whole Gen Z and the 80s thing, there was a bit of a hysteria that popped up about child abductions, because we used to, you open the door, you put the kid on the bike, and you kick him out and then tell him don't come home until dinner, but you better be home before the street lights come on, that kind of thing. And then you had no idea where they were. I remember being, and this is a holdover from me, my parents being young in the 70s. And speaking about parents too, and generally mostly good people make mistakes. We're only human. Long story short on that one. But I remember being 5 or 6 years old and riding my bike to the end of the block, and there was a farm field, and I would just go throw dirt clods at an old barn in a field by myself. And now it wasn't that far away. It felt like a mile to me, but it was probably like, a dozen houses down. It was just the end of the street. So they knew where I was. They could find me in literally 2 minutes. But I felt just a complete sense of freedom. And, if I was gone too long, they would come looking for me. They did that once. And if I got hurt, it wasn't that far for me to limp home. But I had that freedom to just kind of go explore the world. And I think that's been lost. It's there's another author, I think it's Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. And it's about, the fact that we've done a disservice, say, to our kids recently in not letting them be human enough, structuring and controlling safetyism in a large degree of like, we don't want our kids to die, and we don't want them to be horribly maimed and messed up. That hurts our heart. But we got to give them enough room to climb a tree and break an arm. You have to, or they can't become adults. And then I think we've got this artificially extended adolescence that's going on with a lot of people. So many social factors. And then that feeds into the whole psychology thing of like, okay, how are modern therapists handling things even differently than they used to 20, 30 years ago when I was being trained, you know? So I'll stop there. I said a lot of things.
No, I agree with 100% of the things that you've said.
Thank you.
I haven't heard of Heist before, but I agree with the idea of the coddling of the American mind. It is possible
title.
to, right? Yeah, it is a great title. I mean, I think that in any philosophy, if you, any good thing can be perverted, right? Like
Yes,
any good
for
thing
sure.
can be taken to an extreme or misapplied, or like, I can't think of a single thing that can't be somehow
Too
like
much of a good thing. Too much birthday cake. You get sick.
right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So yeah, on the topic of Gen Z, and the general experience of Gen Z people, I think that it's a lot of helicopter parenting in the sense that like kids don't really like go play on the street. They like have play dates, right? And it's like a one-on-one thing, and it's very structured. I think that it goes a little bit deeper than that. So for one thing, I think that there's a pretty serious okay, so in my book I'm almost exclusively talking about how I went through and figured out how to deal with trauma, right? And that's something that pertains to like any age group. In terms of like only Gen Z, I know that in schools I had to take so many exams. Sorry, my dog.
It's okay.
Like so many, not exams,
Cat.
like surveys. Cat, beautiful
Yes,
cat.
thank you.
So many surveys about like my mental health, right?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Like every single time I went to class, people would ask me about my mental health. Like after, like not to get too political, but when Donald Trump got elected, like all of my college went into a moment of like serious mourning and hysteria. And I was
Safe
told
rooms
like
with
if you,
crayons and puppies.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I remember
safe
that.
rooms with puppies. Right. I was told you don't have to do your assignments. I had a professor 3 years after Donald Trump was elected burst into tears in the classroom because she felt like everything that she had worked for in her entire life came to nothing because she was an English professor and she had been trying to like undo what she considered oppressive systems. And it was, and she like legitimately like burst into tears in the classroom when we started talking about Donald Trump. And the thing is that a lot of this, yeah, okay, so like when you give a survey, like a psychological survey, like, hey, kids in my economics class, how are you feeling today? Question one. How many times per week do you feel so sad that you can't do your homework? More than 3 times per week, more than 5 times per week, right? And then like the survey goes down and it's like, have you considered self-harm or suicide recently?
Not until you
have
brought
you
it
ever
up.
burned
What?
yourself? Right, exactly. Right. And that's the thing. That's actually exactly the point that I
Yeah.
wanted to make, is that when you give someone surveys like that or ask leading questions, you're purposely like dismissing other psychological conditions that people have, right? Like I never had to fill out a survey that was like, how many times have you gotten into a fight with your roommates over money? Or how many times have you had to hang up on your boyfriend recently? Or how many times
Yeah.
did you get into a fight with your mom? Whatever it is. All of these are aspects of the psychological character that matter and are like perfectly interesting to talk about. But they're not the things that like people are getting statistics about, whereas people are getting statistics, constant statistics on if you've experienced a microaggression due to your racial identity, or if you've considered self-harm or suicide. Like, that's the thing that, like, it's constantly at the forefront of your brain.
And what they're not asking about too, that's all obsessively negative. And I wanted to get to this. I wrote this down way back when as well. The idea that, and again, I'm borrowing this idea from someone else. I can't remember who, but he said there's an obsessive self-focus is indistinguishable from the experience of anxiety. It's like what anxiety is this obsessing over your state of mind and being and place in the world. And just to contrast that with, there are people describe the peak experiences or being in the zone as almost being disembodied, in a way of like, they're so in the world at that moment, experiencing what's happening or focused on someone else, that they lose a sense of self. And not that we're aiming for that, not that everyone should depersonalize or disassociate. Those are not good things, but just that idea that if you're training people to constantly think about themselves and check in with their own emotions, exactly as you're saying, it's actually increasing levels of anxiety. And my point about all the things that they're not asking how many times did you call, have a pleasant phone call with your mom? How many times did you exercise? How many good meals did you eat? How many times this week did you think about your purpose in life and how you're going to make the world a better place? Not asking any positive questions. It's like, dwell on the negative. Yeah, so I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, exactly. And, the only thing that I would have to say about disassociation is that I think that the idea of completely disassociating from yourself and just focusing on the world is the mental state that a lot of Eastern religions are trying to inculcate in monks, right? That's another thing I was going to come back to.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. What were you going to say on it?
Well, not to cut you off, but we were talking about Abrahamic versus Eastern, and this was the point. But then it was going to come around to meditation and whatnot. There's commonalities in religions too, in terms of that humans are the cause of our own suffering. Now, there's natural evil in the world. You get cancer, tornado, earthquake, but bad shit happens, forest fire, but mostly what religion is focused on doing, and Eastern and Western, is looking at the idea of, well, how are you causing your own unnecessary suffering? In the Eastern religions, they take a god out of it maybe and focus on meditation, but letting go of suffering is a big thing. Stop wanting so many things that maybe you can't have or maybe you don't need, and you will suffer less. It's like the degree of suffering is the mismatch between what I have and what I want. And the Western religions also, they formalize it into different systems. They add a more mystical, connection to a higher power in that sense, and say, well, here's what we've identified. And I was just thinking about this last night. What am I watching? I'm watching anime. I'm watching, I know, I'm a total Gen Xer here. It's like I've been watching anime since Voltron and the Macross Saga when I was, before I went to school in the morning.
My cousin showed me Sword Art Online, and I actually really like it.
It's a good one.
It's a good one, right?
There's a lot of anime that's just crap. And if you show people bad anime, they'll go, this anime is crap. I'm like, no, that's just bad anime. Top of my list, probably.
You were thinking.
The top of my list would probably be Trigun. If you haven't watched Trigun. Some people want to be Superman, Batman. I want to be Vash the Stampede. That's who I would want to be in my life, for real. I'm watching an anime, Raise Zero, starting life from zero in another world, so isekai. It got me thinking about the whole 7 deadly sins thing, because they bring that in as there's the witches of sin, and then there's the priests of these different gluttony and whatnot. And I'm like, it's interesting. I spent a lot of my life as a agnostic atheist, and I'm still mostly, I'd say I'm like an agnostic atheist deist. I think there's mankind didn't create itself or the universe, so there's something above us. There's a higher power. I take that for granted. Like, logically, it just has to be. And then, but observing the human condition, and this is where I developed a new appreciation for Christianity or the Abrahamic faiths in general, because I was big on the Eastern stuff. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Very logical. Long story short, what we've got are the reason why they distilled it into the 7 deadly sins is these are all the different ways that humans cannot escape being human. We have so if it's gluttony, we can't not eat, we will die. but we can't eat too much because that's also bad for us. So the balance is, don't be, eat enough, but not to the point of gluttony. And we get into those other things of like pride. It's like have a healthy sense of self and your accomplishments but not to the point where you think you're better than other people and you're hurting your relationships or acting against other people in a way that you think you deserve because you're better than them. So I think that captures, I don't think there's elements of human nature that go beyond those seven. It's like the big ones. And then they have the opposites of like, if greed is a sin, charity is its opposite. So it offers also a not just a prohibition but a prescription for how to engage with the world. And I'll stop there. That was like all the thoughts I had on that.
That makes perfect sense. So they identified the 5 impulses of man that are like that taken excessively can offend God,
and that we can't escape from. We can't not eat.
You can't.
We have to eat.
Right.
But if you do it too much, gluttony. So avoid that. Don't go too far. Yeah, striking that balance.
That's a brilliant observation. That really is. I'll have to think about that for a while.
Thank you. And I'm not a Christian, so this is just me looking at. I love Greek mythology. I love Norse mythology. I love all of these stories. I think they all have truth in them, and I think the Bible has truth in it too. So even without me being a Christian, so yeah, just to say I'm not proselytizing. So
sure. Yeah. I grew up pretty secular. I had one grandmother who was religious. She's Arab American, so she was kind of like insulated by familial associations from the general like decline of Western religion. But even still, what can you say? Like, I know a lot about a lot of religions because I just read them.
Yeah, they're fascinating stories, if nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that I was gonna say, I think that they're more than fascinating stories, right? I think that human beings have been pretty good at understanding like the purpose and condition of life for a while, and really the essential question that they're trying to get at is, nature is completely indifferent to my death, right? Nature, when you're an animal and you're in the state of nature, you're going to live and you're going to die, and like nature will continue to go beyond, right? And then like human beings have a specific consciousness about like, okay, like we have to behave in a certain way, and like okay, so like a turkey. Turkeys will kill a member of their flock that's injured to not attract predators, right?
Oh, yeah.
So a turkey's okay with like killing its own mother, like hacking its mother to death with its claws, for the sake of not attracting a predator if she's injured.
Yeah.
And no one would say that a turkey is immoral because a turkey is behaving in accordance with its nature, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a turkey's allowed to do that because the turkey is living in the state of nature.
Yeah.
But human beings can't do that. Like you can't, it doesn't matter if your mom is injured, you can't kill her. Even if it's really inconvenient, you can't kill her because that offends something that's uniquely human about us, right?
Yeah.
And so human beings kind of have this more complex, there's like this natural side to us, but there's also this more complex side to us that's like bound by a transcendental moral code. And that's
Absolutely.
really the main thing that I'm interested in, is that like throughout society and culture and time, people feel and know and behave as if there is the most intimate aspect of humanity is the fact that we have this relationship with this moral code that's beyond space and time, right?
Yeah.
And in the Abrahamic faiths, that would be the moment when humanity ate of the knowledge of good and evil, right?
Yeah, I was thinking along those lines too. There's an interesting thing about morality. It's like we don't apply morality to animals because they don't have the capacity to make the kind of choices that we can. Morality is something unique to a higher capacity of consciousness, of like an animal just it's hungry, it eats, it's horny, it fucks, it pisses on the tree because something in it, born that way, didn't have to learn it, just knows this is what I do. And I think you're absolutely right. It's this dichotomy between you have to have the capacity to make a choice, to reflect on yourself and to think about the consequences of your actions. And that's exactly my understanding of the biblical story too. I look at it, the Garden of Eden. and this is why I think it's some people who are like, well, you got to choose the Bible or evolution. You can't have both. I mean, why didn't God say, let there be evolution? I think that's what happened. In my estimation, the universe being what it right, being what it is. Why not? So this is how I understand that biblical story is like, once upon a time in our human ancestry, we came from that common ancestor with apes. So somewhere after that point where the two species diverged, we started to head towards being human. And this was like some, maybe what was it? They're saying like 350,000 years ago, maybe we actually started to become like proto-humans. And that's kind of where I think the Garden of Eden story took place. And it is exactly when we went from an unaware, not responsible animal that lacked capacity for moral judgment to eating of the, evolving into having the brain capacity to become aware of the concept of good and evil, that wait, I can make choices and choices have consequences. And this is, going back to Jordan Peterson, I guess I steal a lot of this stuff from him because if you haven't heard his lecture series on the Bible, set all the political stuff aside and just listen to those. He talks about one of the first things they did in the Garden of Eden story was they became ashamed and covered themselves. They realized they were vulnerable. And part of understanding eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is that I know how I'm vulnerable, therefore I know how you are vulnerable, and I have a choice to make. I can exploit your vulnerability or not. Before we became aware of a choice, there was no choice. We were just instinctual animals. Now we have a choice. I know how other people can hurt me, and I can do that on purpose or not to other people. And I think that is when we became human. As we conceptualize it today. I'll stop there. I said a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And I'm like, yeah, so the thing that I would add is that whether you attribute that moment of the capacity to make moral judgment as something that was, struck upon, or was something that developed gradually over time. In the end, it's that capacity for moral judgment that distinguishes humans from the natural state of being, right? And that humans can at any time regress into the natural state of being. Mm-hmm. And at the turn of the 20th century, right, people originally had only had Christianity to root themselves in the story of who they were, right? Mm-hmm. And this kind of goes back to the Nietzschean concept of like history as a myth, right? So like the things that you learn about history are not actually important for relaying the facts of the past. The things that you learn about history are a story that give you a modern sense of identity. Mm-hmm. And that concept was almost entirely indistinguishable from religion for like however long in Western society. And people had like, okay, so there was this moment in time when human beings distinguished themselves from animals and they had the capacity for like moral judgment. And that's the thing that reflects God. Like that's the reason that like we are made in the image of God, because mm-hmm. we have this knowledge that exists outside of nature. And really moral judgment is not bound by space or time either. So it's
the truth is
beyond
eternal. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The truth is eternal type thing. So yeah, at the turn of the 20th century, we were like, okay, there seems to be some factually incorrect things about the Bible here. It seems like, the dinosaurs, whatever, like there's some serious problems. Then we threw it all out. And then 100 years later, maybe, about 100 years after, people stopped believing in the Bible, we had kind of devolved into a society that really doesn't have that memory of like, hey, we're moral people. Because I don't think that our society, with the exception of like people who are like hardcore Christians and kind of like live separate from the rest of society, like I don't think that like general like social structures and like Americans that you meet on the street are really concerned about the moral consequences of each action that they take, when literally, at least in Middle Eastern consciousness, like you bake a cake for the glory of God. and you die for the glory of God. And it gives people an almost impossible will to live, like an unfathomable will to live despite every hardship that they suffer, as
Yeah.
opposed to like modern American society, which is just so like weak and
Yeah.
so disassociated. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There is a problem with that in the modern world in terms of, I mean, what is it? Hedonism and consequentialism are nothing to found a society on. It's like, okay, so now what? My problem with consequentialism is the idea that, well, the ends justify the means. So we've found that to be a big problem. But on top of that, just what makes you so sure those ends you desire are worth the means in the first place? How did you end up at those ends? So even those ideas of people, well, it's human flourishing, and okay, well, what does that look like? I mean, we have to define that too. Maybe a world without cancer, obviously, probably a better place. But beyond that, like how, there's a lot of hidden assumptions baked into the cake, so to speak. When people talk about just consequences or outcomes being worthy of, first you have to justify what's a worthy outcome, and a lot of them skip that step and go, well, it's just assumed. They have their own tenets of faith in a sense that are unspoken. Where was I going to go with that? To put a pin in the Garden of Eden story. I've had my own thoughts about this, and I don't know if I've heard it expressed this way before, but just the broader concept. Okay, so with the Bible, I'm all over the place. Squirrely brain. I love this. So many great thoughts. One of the reasons I'm not a Christian, one of many, of course, but I don't think that the Bible stories, I think they're all true, but they're not real. If you take my meaning, it's like they tell a metaphysical truth about human nature and our existence in the world, and it doesn't matter if they actually happened. So this is where I was going to go with that. It doesn't matter if there was ever a Noah and a boat, but it tells a real story about how to plan ahead for the inevitable disasters of life in a way that's going to, pay attention and prepare and take care of your family, and you'll come through it. And then after that, you will be fruitful and multiply, all that good stuff. But the Adam and Eve story, I don't think there was ever an Adam and an Eve. I don't think there was one moment where their parents were apes or whatever, and then they were human. I think that was a slow process over many thousands of years. And my interpretation of, rather than blaming, human, there's all kinds of weird interpretations of things. I don't think it was ever meant to say women are evil and sinful. They caused the fallen state of mankind. I don't think that was ever the right interpretation of that. I think what they were saying is that because of how the female animal is constituted physically, they awakened to self-awareness first, and then they engaged in selective breeding with males that also showed that glint of self-awareness, and then together they moved away from being animals. So, and my theory on that is, so it's not like, so if you look at it like the state of nature was better, we never should have become human. Yeah, you can blame Eve for evolving first and call it a sin. I don't think it's that way. It did introduce sin to the world, because before that, like, animals have no capacity to sin. So it isn't a judgment, it isn't a curse upon the human race. It is and it isn't. It's wonderful that we have the capacity for sin. And that's a weird thing to say, and sin being, I'm not imbuing it with supernatural power the way a lot of people do. The technical definition is missing the mark. When you become capable of making choices, you become capable of making poor choices. The possibility of sin enters the world once we became human in a way that it doesn't when we were still animals. Long story short, yeah, I think because of the way, and the reason I think this females evolved first in that capacity is, I think it's the because they are the childbearing of the pair, they have to be more aware. It's like the modern conception is, women, young girls mature faster than boys because they have more responsibilities. Suddenly you have a monthly cycle. It begins, and boys don't. So we get to be a little immature longer. We don't have to take on that responsibility. We don't have to guard ourselves against becoming pregnant or deal with this monthly cycle in terms of you don't want to stain your pants. Maybe you need a pad. You don't want to let your emotions get out of control because they're going to fluctuate a little bit. It's going to happen to you. So I think, long story short, this is my EvoPsych explanation of the Garden of Eden story and how I think it explains what they were observing in terms that they couldn't put like we do today. They couldn't say, oh, hormones and menstrual cycle and all these different things. But so that's why I think Eve evolved first and then brought Adam into the fold of human awareness. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. This is my personal theory. So,
yeah. So what I would first say about the dichotomy between males and females is that discourse is like unnecessarily contentious right now because of like the past 4 decades of feminism. And the truth is that in a state of nature, there like the way that you determine if something is true about humanity is you look how long a thing has happened throughout time and across cultures, right? Like if something is true in medieval England and modern Bulgaria and ancient China, it's probably something about all of you.
You had a little bit of a stutter there. I don't know if you're back yet. I think you're still frozen. We can give it a second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We can give it a second to let it sort itself out.
No.
You're pixelated.
Okay.
It's starting to resolve, I hope. Well, so we can give it a moment. That's all right. There's no rush.
I'm sorry. Okay. You can hear me though, or no?
I'm starting to hear you now. Yeah. Your image is still, it needs to stabilize. We had that problem earlier. I don't know.
I'm sorry about that.
No, not your fault. Technology. I'm amazed any of this works. That's what, when people, I used to play, okay, long story short on this one while your internet stabilizes. I played EverQuest, one of the original online role-playing games from 1999 to 2004, and people would complain about damn server connections and maintenance and downtime and, laggy, this, that, and the other. And I was just thinking, I'm amazed any of this works. How do we do this? This is a brilliant experience. Maybe you're you're on the East Coast, I'm on the West. We're having this conversation. We're getting audio and video. It usually goes off without a hitch. And once in a while you get some static. And I'm like, it doesn't bother me. It happens. So I think you're stabilized though. You're good. So.
All right. Awesome.
You were explaining.
I agree. It's good to focus on the positive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was talking about humanity and the relationship between males and females, right? So if a trend persists across culture and through time, it is probably true. Mm-hmm. And you see across culture and through time that males are always the warriors, right? That not always. There are some exceptions, but like in the vast majority of contexts, men are the people who fight, right? And the fact of the matter is that humanity had to diverge from a state of nature, which means that the only thing that mattered in terms of getting what you want was your capacity for power and force. And the truth is that the only reason that we have like a society where we can pretend like human rights are natural is because we have governments that specifically like dole out the use of force in ways that we all agree upon. Mm-hmm. But the use of force is and always will be like human society is precarious. Like the moment that human society or whatever, like something happens with the government, like the people who will be in control of this society if it collapses are men between the ages of 20 and 40.
Yeah, immediately into warlord feudalism. Immediately, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Immediately. And in a society where men are fighting, I talk about this a lot in my story about Uzbekistan and what it's like to grow up like in the Middle East and in Uzbekistan. And I say this very explicitly that like feminism sounds so utterly stupid to someone who has seen combat because you also, sorry, that sounds weird. I'm going to stand by the words. Okay. Like feminism doesn't make sense to people who have seen combat because the fact of the matter is that if you need protection, you will do what the person who can provide protection tells you to do. You just do.
Yeah.
And that's what human beings have done forever. So that's my thing about feminism, that people like you need to ground, like, obviously, like, I'm confident in my own ability to, like, think and solve problems and whatever, right? Like, I have, like, I'm pregnant with a daughter, and I want her to be, like, resilient and amazing and feel great about herself and all of that, right? And the idea that feminism, that idea of feminism is fine, but disassociating from, like, the roots of humanity, or having these, like, bizarre mantras like I'm a woman, I can do anything, or, like, you know, I'm the idea of feminine strength is the same as masculine strength is just not true.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want her to, like, have to believe in something that's so self-evidently false, you know?
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
my thing.
I'm big
And so,
on.
so
Go good to wrap it up. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you
I'm
off.
sorry. So yeah, so going back to the interpretation of the feminine aspect of the Garden of Eden story, I would say that, like you said, it does make sense that Eve would come to self-consciousness first. You know, it makes sense that a female would be the first person to, like, evolutionarily speaking, to develop this idea of, like, thinking ahead and, like, making, like, oh, if we all behave the same way, then we will be able to do X, Y, and Z, and, like, set those beginning standards of, like, conduct in order to propagate your society, right? It makes sense that a female would do that. And in that way, it does make sense that a female would, like, start that consciousness and awakening.
Yeah.
But but yeah, the idea that females are originally evil, I don't think that is the correct. That I don't think that
Nah.
that is the intended interpretation of that story. But at the same time, I think that the outrage over that story, like, oh, well, I don't believe in the Bible because the Bible thinks that women are evil, is also, like, equally, like, reactionary, right?
Yeah.
And I hate using the word reactionary, but it is
Yeah. It's a
super reactionary.
loaded
It's
term.
like, hey, right.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Sorry,
No, I'll say I pretty much agree with 100% of everything you just said. And to reinforce it, I'm a big fan of the yin yang. And there's, there's hard power and soft power in different ways. And there's the light and the dark, and there's the up and the down, and there's this balance of opposites. And who's the golden mean? Was that Aristotle or Plato? Was it Socrates? It wasn't Socrates.
I actually don't know. I think it was Aristotle.
That sounds right to me. We're going to go with that. We're going to say officially 100% Aristotle. But he even said, the golden mean is almost never exactly in the middle between two polar opposites. I mean, you can't be a little bit pregnant, or a little bit dead. There's and sometimes, you want things perfectly balanced on a scale. Sometimes it is exactly in the middle, but it's not always exactly in the middle. Anyway. So I think the complementary nature of men and women, and, as far as feminism goes, I used to consider myself feminist maybe 10, 15 years ago, because to my unlearned opinion, I just kind of believed the current propaganda, which was, it's just about, equality. We just, it just means, women aren't oppressed. And then I started looking into it a little bit more, and I'm like, okay, there's waves. What is this? So first wave feminism, the idea of right to vote, and second wave, right to work and be independent financially. So I think I don't think it's all good or all bad. I think there's elements to it. What they were trying to correct for, say, maybe back in the day was unfair gatekeeping. I mean, what you would have is the rare woman that wanted to be a pilot, and what was her name? That she got lost at sea. No fault of her own. Can't remember her name. Disappeared. One of the big missing persons cases. Damn, off the top of my head, I can't. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about, that lady. Or they were gatekeeping women out of institutions. Like, this is for men only. And I'm like, I don't agree with that. It may be rare that a woman wants to do something like that, but if she has the capacity, she shouldn't be kept out because, you don't have a penis. I mean, that never made sense to me. But then again, there's going to be natural tendencies, so you're probably going to have fewer women who want to work on an oil rig, or be a bricklayer, or construction work, all kinds of different things. And then you'll get some that do. And, and there's probably fewer men who want to be stay-at-home dads. But there are some, and they love it, and it's perfect, and her career takes precedence, whatever. So I think where feminism, in my opinion, went off the rails is, saying, hey, maybe we got a problem with gatekeeping too. There should be exactly 50-50 parity across all things. They didn't understand the rule of the golden mean, which is proper balance, not precise middle balance. You don't actually want 50% men and women in anything, I don't think, except a marriage, probably. You kind of need that for a kid. But the idea that if a man wants to be a nurse, it's fine. It's not, you don't have to gatekeep people out of things. So that's my nod to the original feminist ideals. And then we've gone off the rails with there's no such thing as gender and other things that I find
there's a lot of that.
Conceptually broken. So anyway,
they're conceptually like you can see with your eyes that it's not true as you're believing it, which has always been really difficult for me. Like the idea that you can espouse something. It's just there's a lot of people who will be showed a piece of evidence and they'll say, no, I believe this, right? So
yeah, that happens. That's
also Amelia Earhart. I looked her up.
There you go. Yeah. If I try to open Windows here, I'm going to screw up something with the recordings. I know, that's what I was thinking too. It starts with an A. I knew it started with an A, and then all I could think of was your last name, and I'm like, damn, that's not it. Anything else I'm going to throw this out there, and I wrote it down so I don't forget it, but I want to make the offer publicly too. So you've got this history in Arabic literature. One of the, so I have a series of books. I call it, I gave it its own title, made up a fancy word, Oneirochronologia, the study of the interpretation of dreams over time throughout history. Oneiros, Chronos, Logos. Anyway, I'm proud of myself. So I did an original 3-volume set of shorter works, things that are I can't publish a book that's 60 pages. So I'll take a 60 page, 180 page, put them together, and now I've got an anthology. Anyway, I'm working on a new one, and the first work I'm resurrecting from history is an 1850s-ish or 30s work on Muslim dream interpretation. And this produced by the Royal Asiatic Society of Great Britain or something like that. So I wanted to throw it out there. If you wanted a writing credit, to have you at least review my work when I get it put together, make sure I've. The
answer is yes. I would.
Well, thank you. I don't want to
that.
volunteer you for anything or put you on the spot, but at least to look over my shoulder and say that little there's no umlauts in Arabic. Take that out of there. Because I may have used the wrong symbol. So there's a word for those. What are those called? Diacritics. Oh, I pulled that out of the Swiss cheese in my brain. Wow, diacritics, the little marks. Yeah.
Yes, the little marks.
Little marks. Anyway, I would love to have a professional second opinion on that kind of stuff. And anyway,
I'd love to do that.
That would be awesome.
I really would. I haven't done stuff like that in a long time. It's been 4 years since I really critically studied it. But yeah, I would love to do it. That sounds fantastic.
That would be cool. Let's get a second opinion. Like I said, not to put you on the spot. Now I feel weird. I shouldn't have said anything. I should have asked you afterwards. but I'm glad you sounded. You're that's awesome.
No. The answer is absolutely yes. It would be super, super fun. Yeah. So yeah, I actually do. So a lot of my focus on Arabic literature was modern. I had a thing about modern Saudi Arabian literature because Saudi Arabia has really severe gender roles, and they also have a birth of women writing really complex novels, and the novels have complex gender roles in them. So I'm not sure if it ever occurred to you to want to read some fiction, but I highly recommend Saudi Arabian modern fiction because it's like the antithesis of Western fiction, and it has a lot of really subversive elements of how you empower yourself within a religious context as opposed to empowering yourself within the modern Western feminism type thing. So yeah, that's what I'm mostly focused on. But I did want to talk a little bit about on the interpretation of dreams.
Yes.
I had to read it for a class once. It's Freud's book about how to interpret dreams. And when Freud wrote it, he thought of it as a scientific piece. I read it in a literature class because the idea, because he said it was based on observation, so it was scientific, but like people are so different that you can't really there's just kind of a flaw in considering these types of ideas science. And I think that flaw is like true of a lot of psychology.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah.
The main things that he talked about in the second half of his book is that dreams are wish fulfillment. Dreams can be distorted. Dreams have a tremendous amount of symbols in just a little tiny piece, or maybe they don't. And dreams, hang on. I haven't read it in a long time.
No, that's fine. I think you're right on with all the descriptions so far. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then dreams have displacement, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea of displacement is that like it's bringing in multiple ideas. It's so like at the beginning, he's talking about like, okay, well, sometimes you're going to dream about something that you wish that happened. And sometimes you're going to dream about whatever, but like it'll be in weird settings, right? Mm-hmm. Like you'll take something and it'll be in a weird setting or a different setting. And I really do recommend reading the second half of the book because he takes you through like individuals' patients' dreams. And you can see how he's extrapolating it. And the point of the course was that the way that he was interpreting dreams is like a brilliant way to interpret literature, brilliant way to interpret literature, because that's like the basic mechanism that you're trying to teach your students when you're trying to teach them, hey, what does symbolism mean? Like, what does it mean when the birds sing in this book, right? And fundamentally, I think it's because it's the same thing, right? Because like art is digging into your unconsciousness. Sorry, yeah. Your unconscious. What is the word? What is the
unconscious?
Word? Unconscious.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
So art is digging into your unconscious, and dreams are digging into your unconscious, right? And personally, I feel like the farther you go into that realm, art can teach you a lot about your own internal life. It can teach you a lot about psychology. Like these like academic barriers that we have between disciplines, like once you really go into it, like you're kind of dealing with the same stuff and it's hard to access. So that was my thing on the interpretation of dreams. And I do have a dream for you to interpret.
For sure. Yeah, I don't want to run you out of time. I'll just say just a couple comments on that real quick, is that, like I was saying earlier with Freud, is that I think he was right about some things, wrong about some things. So if you take his concepts, a lot of them were groundbreaking. Someone has to open the door to the conversation and say, here's what I see. Now, was he necessarily accurate in his descriptions? Was he correct in his understanding or interpretation of those descriptions of what he was seeing? Was he necessarily completely thorough? Like, was he right about everything? And did he see everything? And it's yes and no. It's very much a mix of the two. I mean, we owe the entire profession of maybe if I sit down and talk to this person, they will feel better. Psychology, we owe the whole thing to him, just throwing wide that door and saying, this is a legitimate practice. We can do some good here. It's a medical thing, anyway. So all of the, I would say all of the things he described are real. He's describing actual concepts that do seem to bear fruit. Did you just describe them all perfectly in totality, even within each concept? Maybe not quite, but again, brilliant ideas. And I think you could even conceive of dreams themselves as us telling ourselves a story. And then it becomes literature, then it becomes art in that way of understanding it. And he was definitely right in what you were saying about the idea of there's the displacement of things where I'm not comfortable thinking about childhood trauma, my mother in a specific way. So I'm going to think about something else that stands as an icon or representation of my mother. And that's kind of what we do with the dream interpretation thing, is go and say, okay, well, where is this coming from? What's the concept we're trying to draw out of this symbol? And then we look at, well, how have you experienced that concept in your life in a way that might be relevant to the setting, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the physical location, all of that I get into and you'll see when we do the thing in a minute. So long story short, is Freud the end all be all of dream interpretation? No. I mean, of course, he had that famous split with Jung, where Jung was like, it's much more symbolic than even Freud realized. Freud said it's symbolic, and Jung said, you have no idea. Let me tell you. And he went off on archetypes and all that good stuff. And then it's the very weird combination. So it's Freud to Jung to Joseph Campbell to George Lucas to Star Wars. Bam! That line of great men, so to speak, gave us Star Wars in 1977, and which was a retelling of a futuristic space opera version of the ancient hero myths, is what he was going for with Joseph Campbell, Hero with a Thousand Faces, and actually the little convergence of the Akira Kurosawa samurai films. It was like this was basically samurai space wizards is what Star Wars is. It's great stuff. Go ahead.
I had no idea. I actually had no idea about that.
That connection.
Super cool.
Yeah. Yes, we can thank Freud for Star Wars, basically. Yeah. There's a little fun trivia. I love that. I love that kind of stuff. I mean, not to toot my own horn or self-aggrandize, but I think that's kind of, I'm trying to conceptualize what the hell is a wizard. And I did a video way back when of me trying to explain what do I mean by that. And I think, Gandalf, of course, but Socrates, they were both wizards. I think there's wizards that walk among us today, and I'm trying to be one, trying to embody that archetype. We are what we do, so if I behave as a wizard, then I can become it in that way, in the metaphorical way of maybe I know a thing or two because I've been around. I got some gray hairs. Maybe my back isn't so good, so I walk with a stick. Maybe I speak some magic words. I tell you something you didn't know. Maybe I can see the future because I've been there, done that. Don't do that. I think that's my concept of a wizard. I'm trying to really do it. I had a point with that. Don't remember what it was. I think it's trying to someday I hope to write a book, a wizard's guide to the art of wizardry, and to tell people what I think it really is and how to do it and how to identify one, and what different kinds there are. I think there's evil wizards. I would consider, it's part of my breakdown I'm trying to get to in my brain is there's D&D style almost. There's illusionists. I would say they are actors. Actors are, really great actors, wizards of illusion, make you believe they are someone else. And there's necromancers. And I'm looking at that as like people who, cult leaders, demagogic politicians that capture the brain and that basically treat people like zombies or turn them into zombies through manipulation and control, sociopathic style. So, and there's people who are very accomplished at that.
That's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. There's people who are very accomplished at that, and they are. It's like there's evil wizards. They're not all good. It's just people who are very effective at what they do. And anyway, thank you. I like that conceptualization too. That's where I started. I'm like, ooh, necromancers. Oh.
Yeah. No, that's a really brilliant conceptualization. I think that most of the time when people were telling stories, especially ancient stories, they were talking about things that were evidently true to them, right? They were just using the language that they had available. So if you have a guy who has a bunch of people who are basically dead following him, it makes sense that he would be a wizard.
Yeah, brain dead zombie followers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and people used to call them prophets, right? I
think prophets yet walk among us in these latter days. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course they do. They always have, right?
I consider people like George Orwell. It's very, very prophetic in terms of a lot of the political stuff we're going through right now. That's who I consider to be like prophets. Yeah, those kind of people. They saw it coming. They told us something we needed to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, George Orwell had an amazing insight into the future, and really he had an amazing ability to see politics. I don't see politics. I could see people really well. I don't have that foresight into it like I don't like reading geopolitics as much, just because. But that's like the thing that Orwell could see. Does that make sense? Right, like he was seeing like massive forces that
Yeah.
like operate above society as like with human beings below it.
Yeah, we get into there's so many ways to analyze that kind of stuff too. But yeah, it's definitely what I was talking about, that idea of the concept of wizard being someone who can, or one element, you could scry the future in a crystal ball. You'll get into a meditative state and a vision of something remote or removed above, conceptual comes to you, and you can describe it to other people. There's very much an aspect of that. So, people who are able to do that and see patterns and say, here's a pattern I can see that no one else can. And then they describe it and people go, wow, that's crazy. And then it happens and they're like, wow, he's a wizard. How did he know that? It's that unique insight and the ability to communicate it. I think you might be frozen again. Oh no. It's starting to get a little staticky and fuzzy. I can just vamp. I can just talk. I'll jibber jabber for a moment while I let your side stabilize. I think it's probably a good opportunity to switch into the dream thing, or we will run out the whole 2 hours just having a conversation. I love talking to you. It's good stuff. It's nice to talk to someone who gets it. And speaking
it is
of
good. Okay, so you can hear me all right. Hey, I've been able to.
You're starting to come through a little bit. I think it's sorting itself out. I'll just make one more comment about feminism. What I would never want to do is have you get kept out of sharing your insights and brilliant mind with the world. That is, I'll give that nod to feminism, saying that was a good idea, that maybe people should have the ability to hear what you have to say without some of the other stuff that makes it detrimental. I'll say that. I think you're
Thank
starting.
you.
I think you're back. Yes, I see you moving. I hear you talking. Good. Okay. So and then we'll shift gears so I don't short you on the dream process. So let me make a little note here of the time for editing. I throw in a commercial right about now. Sorry, guys. Here it comes. My usual process. I'm just going to shut up and listen. Our friend's going to tell us her dream, and then we're going to talk about it together. So I'm ready when you are.
Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks exploring the psychological principles which inform our dream experience, and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, documenting the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
Okay, so to preface this dream, I've never had a problem with not doing my homework. I actually like sometimes I had a problem with not doing my homework between like late elementary school and like the first 2 years of middle school, but since then I haven't. Okay, so now I'll tell you my dream. Since mid-COVID, so for about 4 years, I've been having recurring dreams that I haven't completed high school yet because I've skipped so many classes. The dream never takes place in a classroom where I can actually learn. It's always after hours. I'm trying to talk to the teacher about how I can possibly graduate high school, even though I'm really late on a bunch of assignments, how I need to graduate high school, how I need to enroll in a GRE course, or it's me in my bedroom mulling over hundreds of pages of homework that I know I'm never going to do. So there's no visual similarities in these dreams, nor is there a common setting. I had one again last night. So last night I was having a dream that I was going to watch a movie about a flood in which water starts bubbling up, but I'm in a theater, right? So I'm watching a square of water bubbling up in the woods. and then the spray of water gets bigger, and then the spray of water gets bigger. And then I realize that the movie theater is flooded, but we're still in the beginning of the movie. So I say to myself, oh, this movie needs an exposition and character development. So I walk around the movie theater and I meet a woman in a pink shirt, and I think to myself, my husband won't be jealous if I hang out with this woman, so I'm going to hang out with her. I start talking to this woman in the pink shirt, and I ask if she wants to go into the canoe for the rest of the show. So we get into the canoe, and now there's water on the ground, and there are some dogs, and we go rescue the dogs together, and we put them in the canoe, and then we row to the city center. And then the city center hasn't been flooded yet, but we drag the canoe onto like the streets of what looks like New York. And there are people running in the streets, and we're in a restaurant. I know the flood is coming, so I tell her, hey, we should both have a boat so that we can take supplies with us. So I climb to up the pole of a restaurant, and I use the waterproof fabric that they hang over the outdoor tables at the restaurant to start trying to make a canoe for myself. And then the water starts trickling in the city, and I get back into the canoe. And the woman in the pink shirt, who's at this point is like my established lover, because we have this, we have this relationship. That was part of it. So me and this woman in the pink shirt, and then another random middle-aged woman with red hair who's wearing a black vest, and I don't know how she got there. She's also in the canoe with the dogs. And then when I'm in the canoe, I think to myself, damn it, I haven't graduated high school yet. I have to call my teacher. It's not I have to finish the story, but first I have to call my teacher. And I call the office and I say, I'm sorry that I haven't done my assignment yet. And I start frantically doing math problems on my phone, and I don't get to finish the story about the canoe.
Okay. Woo, lots of good stuff. Talking about a flood myth, huh? I love it. That is great. 21. It's writing down times, y'all. Okay. Oh, that's fantastic stuff. I love it. We've got multiple settings. Seems like it's got multiple parts or transitions to new settings. Sometimes a dream. Okay, talked to one gal. The entire dream was the sensation of falling through a void. That was it. That's one. So sometimes there's one setting, there's one key experience, and that is the focus of everything. This one is definitely narrative style. It's definitely going through telling yourself a story about. So how do I conceptualize a lot of these things? You mentioned, and I wanted to get to this too. You mentioned the idea of Freud conceiving things as wish fulfillment. It's one of those things where, like, yes, sometimes they are. In a way, maybe all of them are, but not exactly. I think it's broader than that, and I think it's been proven that it's broader than that. But very often there are wishes, and a wish can be a desire or a fear. We're pushing or pulling on different things. I want a good thing to happen, or I'm afraid a bad thing will happen. Very natural to the human condition. So to say every dream conceals a wish, sort of. I think some dreams can be very focused on solving personal problems sometimes. I had this experience. I need to understand it so that I can process it and come out the other side with something beneficial. That very often happens. Sometimes dreams are purely conceptual. We just have a curiosity about an idea, and we explore that as like a thought experiment in a dream. And now mostly I think there's a blending of the two, and I think it's almost always a blending of the two in terms of, our concepts of the world speak to the symbols we're using to explore other things. And actually a big part of a lot of the historical dream literature that I'm republishing is the idea of a typical dream, and being in class and unprepared, naked at a presentation, late for a train, falling off a high place. typical dreams, very often repeated. And so for you, it's also, it seems that not only does it fall into the typical dream category in a sense, not because it's always the same, but because it returns to a similar theme, but also the recurring dream category because it returns over and over again. So you've, it seems as if my working theories is that recurring dreams have very often something to do with crystallizing a particular concept that recurs in your life. And you've represented this as failing to complete high school, that something about that time, that experience, the necessity of it, the experience of it, has been crystallized in your mind as representing a certain kind of experience that keeps coming back to you in the real world. We haven't nailed down what that is, but I like to start with some of these bigger, broader concepts and we try and narrow in. And I'm not even asking you to validate that necessarily, like, yes, that is true, or no, it isn't, but to kind of, put a pin in it and we let it percolate. So there's some core concept we're gonna try and tease out there, and you go through multiple settings. So you're in a theater, and you're on the streets of a city, but specifically then you're in a restaurant, and specifically you go to the top of the restaurant and a flagpole, and then the water keeps rising through all these things. The water's coming, and you're trying to get away from it or get prepared for it. Very, very, very Noah in the flood type of stuff, preparing for disasters. And where you end up as a result of this is back at that concept that we're going to try to get to, of whatever not graduating high school represents to you in the dream context. So does it make sense where we're kind of starting and where we're heading? You're muted.
Absolutely.
Okay, there you go. You're not muted anymore. Okay. That's fine. Yeah. So my process is usually, as I say, I shut up and listen. Then we go through it again. So I'm going to start trying to see it through your eyes a little bit better. Now, I don't consider what I do, and I wouldn't do this if I wouldn't call this counseling and therapy if I didn't do it right. So then the reason this is not is we could take this one dream and talk about it for literally weeks of hour-long sessions. If you're going to do real clinical dream analysis, it's going to be deep, and one dream can take a long. So we're cramming it in. This is it's a version of it, and I think it works, okay. And it leaves you with more questions than answers. You're going to have to kind of follow up on your own, but I try to do a mini version of that. It's a microcosm of it. Okay, so you're in a theater. The first experience, you're at the beginning of the dream, and usually there's like a little fuzzy stuff before, and people don't remember what it was. But so the first location, being in a theater. How would you describe the theater in terms of, it's a modern movie theater, it's a old-timey vaudeville theater?
Actually, I had no visuals about the theater. I just knew that the scene that I was watching had a border, and therefore I was protected from it.
Okay.
So it was like it was like a square screen, and I was watching. I was watching the basically the woods flood, right? So like water started coming up, and then it came up bigger, and it came up bigger. But at no point did I feel anxiety, because I knew that I was somehow protected from that image, or it was a movie that I was watching or something.
Okay, that's fantastic. So this is why I ask the questions. I get images in my head of, oh, it's a movie theater. And, for me, it was kind of a maybe late 1800s. You would go and dress up in your fancy top hat and sit and watch a Jugglers or something. Anyway, this is why I ask, because the dream is not in my head. I have none of these answers. I'm not talking to spirits. I have no psychic powers. I need to see what you see. So you conceptualize it as a theater, or at least you use that word to describe it, but that's not quite the experience. The experience you actually had was not even having a sense of where you were necessarily, but as if in a theater-like place because you saw the screen, a rectangle through which you're observing things. And that's, I think you were hitting on something right off the bat when you started saying I felt protected from it. And my thought was removed from it. So this is a situation you're observing more than you're experiencing whatever's going on the screen. And I think that's, so that could be for two reasons. And going back to Freud too, there's the whole displacement type of thing is, okay, maybe, who knows? This is actually something that's happening to you, but you need some emotional distance from it. You're going to dispassionately view it as an observer, even if you're observing yourself. You're going to treat it that way. Or, and this is why, I'm not going to tell you which one. We're going to have to try and figure it out, or we don't figure it out. Sometimes we don't get all the answers, but the alternative is, you really are considering yourself as someone observing something that is not happening to you, that you're mostly observing this as something that's happening to other people. This is another one of those things we put a pin in, and I throw it out there. You can have an immediate response and you know automatically which one it is. Maybe you don't. And that's okay, because it may become more clear in retrospect as we move ahead. So, and you can always stop me anytime and correct me or throw your 2 cents.
I agree. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you wanted me to stop you.
You can, absolutely. Now we're talking. Now we're collaborating.
Cool. Yeah, I think that I think that I actually have trained myself to do that in my conscious thoughts. Even when I'm in a situation that's stressful, I'm very good at looking at wherever I'm in or whatever place I'm in through a screen. And that's something that I did as an adult. And it's just, a certain disassociation that's always been really helpful for me. So it started, so maybe a more correct interpretation is that I started by watching this flood, and then I realized I'm going to tell a story about the flood that came to me. But first I know that it's coming, and now I have to go and prepare.
Absolutely. And then the next thing that happens is you're observing this thing that's happening through a screen, but then you actually do end up, the flood does come to you. You do end up having the experience of it. So that I think that very much gives us a clue of like, okay, this is not something, let me start over again. It seems like you have reported and described a typical pattern you have of being of a more distanced, dispassionate, observational stance on even things you're experiencing. Like you got a problem, you're going to consider it, you're not going to hold it close, you're going to hold it out in front of you and look at it and go, what is this thing? What am I looking at here? A little more rational, less emotive or visceral knee-jerk response to things, even things that are happening to you. So it looks like we're going in that direction. So what you notice is the water is coming. It's a forest scene, and there's water in like a spout, like a old yeller geyser, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, like an old yeller geyser. It started as a little mound.
I said old yeller. Oops. Yellowstone. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I knew what you meant because you used the word geyser. Yeah. I knew exactly what you meant. It was. It actually was exactly like a geyser. It was a little mound that was trickling water, and then it got bigger, and then the water started rushing, and then it got really big, right?
And so here's where I introduce what I call counterfactuals, the idea of it wasn't a river overflowing its banks. It wasn't glacial melt, turning into a cascade. It wasn't a tsunami on the ocean. There's something about this forest setting and the idea of the water, the problem coming up out of the ground. What struck me is a natural environment. So a more natural kind of problem. It wasn't the breaking of a dam. Breaking of a dam would be some kind of man-made failure, or in a sense, seems like a more natural problem you're considering. I don't know if that evokes anything in you.
Yeah, it was more of a volcano, but with water coming out. Maybe a way that I could have interpreted it, instead of saying I was in a theater, a way that I could have conveyed it to you is that I saw on the news through a screen that a volcano of water had erupted, and now suddenly I have to go find a canoe. Maybe that's a more accurate recollection of the dream.
Sure. Excuse me. This is where we get into more Freudian stuff, and I think he was right about it. There's what he called secondary elaboration, where we start thinking back on the dream and filling in some things, and that does happen. But I think he generally considered it a problem, and I don't necessarily, because when we start bringing these images back to our mind, things come to us. The free association style that connects to it, and we start saying things around it that describe. Try to better describe, what did I see, what did I feel, that kind of a thing. So you've got this, but very much you're describing, it's in the woods, it's a geyser, it's volcanic, it's none of these things are man-made. There's something natural. So if we look at two categories of evil in the world, natural evil and man-made evil, this is definitely of the natural evil variety. It's a problem we're going to have to deal with. It's a flood. It's a volcano. It's a hurricane. It's cancer. It's not something you necessarily have control over. It's something that's going to come to you. Whether you like it or not, you got to deal with it. Couldn't be avoided, and it's nobody's fault. Does that feel right for the description?
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
Gotcha. That's cool. Those are just exploring what is this thing? What does it look like? What is it doing? What does it behave like? And we get better answers. Do you need a moment? Do you need a break? I'm fine with that. Either way.
Sorry, my dog wants to come in. Just give me one moment.
Do you want to take 5 or? Okay. Not a problem. I could vamp for a minute too. This is a great guest. I'm going to say that while she's not here. I'm really having fun talking to her. I enjoy all my guests, but don't tell her she's back. I wonder if she'll go back and listen to this. Alrighty, we can always take a break too if you needed a minute.
You know what? I think that I muted myself when I gave my explanation. My dog needed to come in. I'm really sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was saying if you needed more time, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. So I've got a little wiggle room to me. We've got 10 minutes left. When I said I thought I would need to be done, you're not on a hard time limit like that too, or are you? You don't have to go.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Otherwise, if you were, I'd try to rush. And don't worry about the squeaky toy noises. That's perfectly fine. It's not a big deal. Let me see here. Animals. You should see some of my live streams. They are constant interruptions. Okay, so we have now all of that just describing the state of a natural problem coming to you. How did you get from observing that screen to finding a canoe? Did you find the canoe first or the woman in pink?
Woman in pink. I found the woman in pink, and I think that she had the canoe.
What did you see or experience in that search or in the finding? What location did you find her in?
Yeah. So I saw the volcano through a screen, and then I said, "Oh, this story needs an exposition. It needs an exposition. Right. I need to find a character." So I look around and I find a woman, and I say to myself, my husband won't be jealous if I develop a relationship with her because she's female, right? So I go to this woman. By the way, my husband's not a dick. I'm just putting that out there. This is just a dream. Right. So I go to this woman, and she has a canoe because she also knows that something is coming. Or actually, I don't remember if she has the canoe or if I have the canoe.
Okay, and that's fine if it's
the canoe at the same time.
That's fine if it's
okay.
A little vague. I mean, I think it would mean one thing if you brought it. It would mean one thing if she had it, and it means something else. I think probably that you're not sure, and something about the two of you coming together causes the discovery of the canoe. I think that's somewhere we're heading.
Right.
Okay. Lots of interesting things here. So and this is another thing I would say, Freud is right about in terms of the density of things. The more you look into stuff, the more layers are packed inside of it. So that's what I'm trying to do is, extract it apart in some ways. The observation leads to the realization of some kind of necessary action. And the necessary action you thought was, this story needs exposition. I've got to find a character. So what does that mean? How would I describe that back to you? There's something going on in there that describes the way you approach problem solving as in general, I think, if that makes sense. And I'll try and describe what I mean. That exposition is explanation, basically. So what if someone, oh, what a cutie. Look at that. It's description. I mean, we need we need someone to tell us what's going on. We need to put this into words, basically. And in order to do that, you need a perspective from which to give a description. Someone who's observing the scene, experiencing the scene. I need a character. I need to know where. I need an explanation. I need to know, and in order to get an explanation, I need someone to give the explanation. Am I onto something there? Does that feel right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And feel free to tell me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be wrong if you go, none of that, but here's what I was, when you said that, here's what I thought. That's fine.
Yeah, I think that I believed that I was writing a story, or I believed that I was going to go through something so that in the end I would be able to write the story. And I was like, okay, so this is the major problem that I'm witnessing through a screen. I need an exposition, so I need a character. And then I go through and I start problem solving for the major problem. But then my dream gets interrupted because I haven't finished high school yet.
Yep. So the chain of thought appears to be, I'm observing something. I want to be able to communicate what I'm seeing. The way I do that best is by the exposition of some kind of a main character. I pick a perspective, who's seeing this. And it's probably, if you're a writer, I mean, it's like, that's one of the big things, especially stories that follow, say, one character and it's all about his thoughts and his motivations or whatnot, or hers. And even when they're wrong, they're telling you their true thoughts, even if it's an incorrect assessment. And then that's part of their character too. So you're like, yeah, I have an observation. I want to be able to communicate this, tell the story. I need a perspective from which to give exposition. And that leads naturally to, okay, well, who do I find? Who do I choose? Who is suggested to me by my subconscious is this woman in pink. And when you think about her, does anything stand out about her other than her clothing? And what kind of clothing was it? Height, body shape, demeanor, anything kind of jump out at you? Describing her.
She was an athletic looking African American woman. Pink shirt. She looked a lot like the star cross country runner in my high school.
Oh. There's a high school link, huh?
There's a high school link.
Now that you think about it, right? And that's fine too. So pink shirt and any other, skirt, pants, track shorts.
I don't remember.
It stands out or it didn't. Yeah. So no, that's an interesting. So I just asked you, well, what does she look like? You know what? She looked like this gal I knew in high school. What was your relationship to that person at the time? You were aware of her. You were friends with her. You went to track meets. You used to be a runner and she was your chief rival.
Yeah. I was a kind of chubby girl who was on the cross country team for the first 2 years. She was a really, really fast runner. And she occasionally talked to me at track meet dinners. Once a week, we would have track meet dinners, or once every 2 weeks or something. And they were like the first high school parties that I went to. And they were obviously supervised by adults, but there was like one adult and 40 teenage girls, so you would have whatever conversation. I talked to her a couple of times. She was cool. I was pretty indifferent to her. Yeah.
So you would say she was
Yeah, her name was Jessica.
aspirational, inspirational, role model type. Like if you want to be a good runner, you recognized her ability as a good runner, and she was kind, or at least socially interacted with you. You know, she wasn't a mean girl. She was cool.
No, she was cool. Yeah,
Very nice.
She wasn't mean.
Yeah.
She didn't really take notice of me.
Fair enough. You weren't on her radar because she's like, you know, she's on the team, but she's not in my league. But I'm not going to be a jerk. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Fair enough.
That's how it was.
Fair enough. Yeah. Interesting connection between, oh yeah, I remember interacting with her at track meet dinners, and where does the canoe trip take you but to a restaurant? I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I don't know, but definitely there's something, and it could be as simple as thinking of this particular woman reminded you of being in a restaurant with her, and so of course your brain goes, hey, let's set the next part of this dream in a restaurant. It could be as simple as that. It could be a little more meaningful. We'll see if we can tease out something going on there. So there's something about, as I was saying, it's not that you brought the canoe or found it. It's not that she already had it and gave it to you, but the meeting of the minds, the connection between the two of you, there's like a magic that happens when two people can do something one person can't. And what comes out of that is, bam, we got a solution. We got a canoe. Water's the problem. I need a canoe. I need something to float on. Could have been any kind of a thing. Counterfactuals, it could have been a yacht. Whoa, she had a yacht. I mean, that would be putting her on a pedestal, perhaps. It could have been, she gave me a rubber ducky, flotation ring, you know, one of those kids' pool toys. But this was a canoe. What kind of a canoe? An old, dugout made of a solid tree, or modern fiberglass?
Yeah, it was an old canoe.
And in terms of old, are you looking at what era would you put it in? 1920s, 1800s, like literally Native American dugout?
Yeah, I would say more of a Native American dugout canoe. It was an old, ancient canoe-looking thing. It didn't have seats, right? The canoe didn't have the boards across it where you would sit on. You had to sit on the floor of the canoe. So,
okay.
If it was...
And do you have any sense of the physical setting you were in, the surroundings, the environment, when you met her and discovered the canoe together?
Yeah, so we had gone from inside a building into the woods that was getting flooded by the volcano. So there was a lot of fluidity in the settings.
Yeah.
But we rode from the flooded woods, like a swamp, to the city, and we knew that the flood was coming.
Okay. Interesting there too. So seeing it in my head and kind of feeding it back to you, describing. Observing the problem at a distance through a screen. I need an explanation. I need a perspective through which to analyze the situation. I find, and you find her indoors. You discover that she's in your immediate environment, that you don't have to look very far to get the help you need to settle on a perspective through which to analyze this. And so we might even analyze the rest of the dream through this perspective of something that this person taught you, something that you were inspired by them to become. Lots of different ways to do that. I'm not saying it's any one of those things, but something about that is that, well, you chose this person as the main character to give you the exposition for a reason, at least in that particular setting. And then something about the two of you coming together made it possible to then leave this contained distance and enter the natural environment in which the adverse event is taking place, and gives you the tool you need to overcome it. The flood's coming. I need a boat. Hey, there's a canoe. And it's very interesting that it's ancient too. You described it as ancient, old dugout style. That's why I wanted to get a handle on it too, because that might have said something about the era of the tool itself. is what I'm trying to say. So if I'm going to analyze something through a particular perspective, there's going to be markers of where that perspective came from. And so the idea that it's ancient, in thinking of storytelling in general, you might be like, this is a very old problem and there's very old solutions. And so you gave yourself a physically old solution to this problem. We've been building boats for a long time. But of course it isn't about water. I mean, the problem isn't an actual flood. That's where that's like another thing where Freud was right. We give these symbols in there. It's like, so it's like this natural flood. It's like a flood. Let me tell you a flood story to get your brain going down the right understanding of what you're trying to process here. This one, she lays right on the notes. This is baby.
Right on the notes.
Oh, always.
Hi, baby.
Oh no. And then if I get her in the right spot, she'll do the. Let me see if I can make her do it. No, she's going. There it is. Okay, she's got that little nerve behind her ear. Okay. Long story short. So then you enact the plan to escape from the immediate danger. So there's something you're getting even more distance from it. It isn't like you rowed the canoe to the location of the geyser and put a plug in it. That'd be a completely different experience. So what you actually have to do is get away from it, and you go through, and it makes sense, just a logical sense, that there's like this swamp-like area where there's already some flooding, and it's above. You're not walking on solid ground. You're in the water. You're already dealing with the immediate effects of the problem. And you're successfully overcoming it by getting more distance from it. I'm gonna stop there. You got a thought? You started nodding.
Yeah. So, the water actually did not induce any anxiety in me throughout the entire thing. I didn't have any anxious feeling about the fact that a flood would come or that I was in any danger. Now, I have had dreams in the past where I was drowning. And I would wake up from those dreams because
Gasping,
I was, right. So I have had dreams where I was scared of water in the past, but in this dream, the water was kind of just like, oh gosh, this is happening. And I was really much more concerned about the fact that I had a friend in my boat with me. And that was like, and I don't remember what I had said to her. I don't think that we had any dialogue. I was just like observing that in this story, I have an exposition with a friend in a canoe with me.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Very interesting too. So there was never at any point in the dream a sense of anxiety, threat, danger. Yeah. Maybe, let's see, what do we make of that? We get anxiety or feel threat or fear when it's the disparity between the demands of a situation and our abilities. So something about this, you're conceptualizing, whatever this is, I have it under control. I don't feel this is beyond my ability to understand or adapt or cope with. There's something like that going on in there. And then, the presence of anxiety would say the opposite of, like, you're conceptualizing this flood is a really big deal and it is beyond your ability to deal with. Every step of the way you seem to have, I need to find a person. There she is. We need a boat. There it is. We need to get away from the geyser. Done. Through the swamp. And then you end up on the shores of a city, and you described it as kind of New York-like. And that may mean something, it may not, but that's a good, easy filler for, but it's definitely, you've gone from a state of nature to moving towards inhabited civilization. There's something about, you've got a natural problem that is not man-made. You've got the collaboration with a competent person that you respected from way back when, a physically competent person. You could have put in a person who was your writing English teacher at the time. So there's something about the physical abilities of this person that speaks to the nature of the problem you might be dealing with, as you chose them as the avatar of who to turn to for advice and partnership. And speaking of that too, just to quickly address, I mean, not to say you do or don't have any particular sexual orientation, but I don't think it's necessarily indicative of you've got some secret lesbian tendencies or something. Now you may, in reality, you may, and we just haven't mentioned it. But I don't know that that's what that's about. What is it like?
Yeah, I agree with you. I was hesitant to include that detail, but I was like, yeah, I should include it. I don't think that I do, at least not consciously, but I did in the dream.
Yeah.
In the dream,
But you didn't.
it was like,
I was going to say you didn't actually have any sexual relationship with the person, but you had a relationship that was intimate. Yeah, it wasn't a sex dream. So I don't, that's why, and even a sex dreams, like if I had a dream that I stabbed my cat and I woke up horrified, feeling terrible, that doesn't mean I secretly want to murder kittens. That's not how any of this stuff works. No, and
right.
Even when you have sexual dreams, say, I think I talked to another person where it's the concept of being so close to someone that it's as if as close as you could possibly be, which there's few things that are closer, more intimate than the sex act in that sense. So
right.
so for this one, there's what am I trying to say? And maybe we'll tease it out a little bit more too as we go along. But the idea that you've formed a very intimate bond, that you've taken this concept so much to heart, as if you're holding it to your chest like you would embrace a lover. And it's more the concept of being that close to something, or being that vulnerable and trusting and allowing that much intimacy. That's where I think we're going with it. I think the sexual angle is just not useful or true. I take your word for it. There's no reason to suspect.
Okay.
To suspect it's not.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right. No, it would be okay if it
Right.
was
Not that there's
true.
anything
like,
wrong
I'm
with
not
that.
saying
Yeah.
that it's not. I just right.
No, it is
Right.
either true or not for you, and so we're gonna go with that because I think that was my gut sense anyway. Do you have a clear representation or image or experience of getting from the canoe to the restaurant, or you just kind of ditched it on the shore and suddenly you were somewhere else?
No, we did not have a clear thing. We at some point we had to get out of the canoe. We dragged the canoe to the restaurant. But I don't remember when we got out. But the canoe came with us, and we had to physically carry it. But it was easy. It was easy to drag. It was like nothing.
That's interesting too. So you didn't leave it behind. There's something about this tool that sometimes it is not conducive to the circumstances. What am I trying to say? It's like it's something you don't leave behind, even if you can't use it for the moment. And you showed yourself bringing it along. That's very interesting too.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm going to need this later. I'm not abandoning it. I'm not done with this. But it was also easy enough to bring it along. It wasn't, you didn't have that experience of panting, sweating, difficulty dragging this. That would, again, I like to go with counterfactuals. That's one of those things where it's like, if you did, you'd go, okay, maybe I'm bringing something that doesn't belong, and it's a detriment to me. But this, okay, so we just say this was easily brought to the restaurant. And did you have any particular kind of experience at the restaurant where you were, did you talk to the people there or what?
No, so at the time, everyone in the city knew that a flood was coming, so people were running around. But we had gone to the restaurant, and I said, we need more than just the canoe. So I started taking the canopy, the like fabric that they use over the outdoor seating, and I was going to try to make a waterproof boat with that stuff.
Okay, I got slightly distracted. I found another piece of paper in there from who knows when. Huh. This was another interpretation I had with someone. I'm gonna have to find out where that belongs. Sorry, it's completely distracted me. You get there, there were or were not other people there. Sorry.
There were other people in panic.
Okay.
Because they knew the flood was coming. Everyone in the city knew the flood was coming.
Okay. And it's okay. So this is very well could have been the entire dream was you and this one other person and no one else was present, but you showed yourself, you went to a inhabited, right? Inhabited city, very, very much iconic of humans, civilization itself. And those people there have become aware of a problem. You got the sense that they knew about it when you arrived. You weren't the one that told them necessarily.
Yes.
Okay.
They all knew.
They all knew, and they were in a panic about it. They're like, whoa, this is a big deal. But you never had any panic. You're like, I know exactly what to do. I can handle this. So you're showing yourself maybe a difference between how you handle a certain kind of problem and how other people might respond. Like, okay, number one, chill the fuck out. Number two, do something useful. So you had this experience of knowing you needed more than just one canoe. Like was that so that you and your partner each had one, or were you planning to save other people? What was the purpose of making a second canoe?
I wanted extra room for my stuff.
Oh, and I completely forgot about the dogs thing. There was in the swamp, you saved dogs.
Yeah, in the swamp we saved some dogs, which is nice because I have dogs and I like saving them.
Yeah. Well, and that's I would say that's probably one of the few things in the dream that's maybe the most easily understandable and directly related to your life. If we're on to something here, is like, the first thing you would do after you were safe is make sure your dogs were safe because you care about them a lot. And, also you in this conceptual setting, you're showing yourself you've already got a partner, so your husband wasn't present. You didn't think, you did have a moment of saying, can I be this intimate with someone or bring something this close to me in a way that is not, doesn't threaten my husband? And you're like, no, he'd be okay with this because she's a girl. So he's not going to be jealous or feel that this is inappropriate or a betrayal of him in some way. And that whole thought may have been inspired just by realizing that the conceptual approach you were going to bring to problem solving was related to a relationship brief, even distant relationship in high school with a specific archetype that happened to be female. And you go, wait a minute, is my husband okay with that? Oh, she's female. He doesn't care. If it was a man, you might have gone, I'll have to explain to him why this is not what it looks like. But anyway, so that might not be all that relevant too. So where did the dogs go when you reached the shore? They kind of disappeared there, or they weren't.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
They disappeared. You
showed yourself successfully resolving that part of the dilemma. Like, okay, my dogs are safe. I don't have to think about that anymore. It's what it seems like. And you get to this restaurant and there's other people. How did you just show yourself people being in a panic? Or did you just know that they were freaking out?
They were like running. They were running and they were trying to build boats.
Okay. They were also building boats.
Everyone was trying.
Did you get a sense that they had seen you, or they also kind of independently hit on the same necessary solution?
I think that they all saw the same video, maybe. I don't know. I didn't have a complete explanation, but everybody knew that a flood was coming, and they were all trying to figure it out.
Okay. Yeah. And it's a very simplified problem too. So even if you're dealing with something more complex, sometimes the answer is obvious. And if it's a flood, it's obvious. You need a boat. So you're showing yourself, okay, other people are freaking out, but at least they are aware of the problem. They're doing something about it. And then their action is effective. They're going to build a boat. Whether they're going to do it in time, at least they're doing the right type of thing that they should be doing for that scenario. So the purpose behind needing to build an additional boat or a second boat is that you had stuff you wanted to bring with you. Did you have a concept of what that stuff was, what you needed to fit into this larger or second boat?
I started raiding the restaurant for food, and I put the food in the boat.
I think I missed that part. I think you did tell me that too.
I did tell you that.
Yeah.
But I did. I started. Actually, it was weird because I wasn't taking food from the back of the restaurant. I was picking it off from the ceiling as I was picking off the canopy.
Interesting.
I was picking off the food.
So there was food like
throwing it into the boat,
stuck to the ceiling, or
it wasn't abnormal.
Right, it felt completely natural. Of course. Well, where else would you find food? Of course, it's on the ceiling. I'm like, now wait a minute. That is now looking back on it, that is very unusual. Why show yourself that the food was on the ceiling? How was it packaged, or was it just like a chicken leg and you picked it like a piece of fruit, or?
Yeah, it was packaged in to-go containers.
Okay.
Yeah,
One
because
thing,
they knew the flood was coming.
and so maybe the rationale was get the food off the table so that it wouldn't be harmed by the flood. We'll store it on the ceiling. Maybe there's
Yeah,
something there.
I have no idea. I don't
That's
think that it
so
was.
bizarre to me too. I'm like, I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Nothing comes to mind when I
I,
think about the action of retrieving it.
Yeah, my dreams are very often absurdist in that way.
Fair
I've
enough.
had a lot of absurdist dreams. I just chose that one because I had it last night, but
Sure. That
I
happens a lot.
remember my dreams a lot.
People
Yeah,
have a dream the
I
night before they talk to me. Yeah.
right, right. I wish that I had kept a record of my dreams, but very often I'll tell like, whoever is around, like, oh, I had a dream about like zebras that walk on two legs and talk or whatever. Like I have a lot of dreams about women with really, really large molars. Like that's a recurring thing in in like multiple dreams over time. I've had problems with
Yeah.
women screaming with like huge, huge teeth. So I don't know. I have dreams where everything is upside down and it doesn't bother me.
Sure.
I don't know. That's
Yeah, yeah.
something.
Well, it very often there's one or two elements of a dream where we're like, we're probably never going to figure that out. Why? And then
Yeah.
like the whole understanding doesn't really hinge on that. Sometimes it's a throwaway element. Sometimes it's as easy as that kind of we come up with any kind of rational explanation. Going, of course it'd be on the ceiling. That's to keep it safe from the water. It did. That's why I did say plucking a chicken like pulling a piece of fruit off a tree just to see if that sparked anything in you. Not necessarily. So there could be an explanation that we'll never find. Some elements are just so bizarre, but and that was kind of coincident in a way with realizing that the awning material would make a good boat fabric because it was waterproof. Oh, it's waterproof, of course. And it's interesting. You take something that covers from rain and you're using it to put it underneath you to protect from something coming from down below. I don't know what that means either, but and there was something about climbing a flagpole. How did that come into it?
I had to climb the flagpole to get the awning.
Okay, so that's how you climb the flagpole to reach the awning,
right?
And then when you say food like stuck to the ceiling, you're not talking about on top of a roof. You're talking about like to the underside of the ceiling. Was it climbing the flagpole that revealed to you where the food was?
It was like on a rafter that's like going through the ceiling.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was like food on the rafter, and I took it down.
Okay, fair enough. Interesting. And it was to-go food. It was all
yes,
prepackaged and ready neatly packaged and ready for you to take with you. Very convenient. Very
yes,
almost like it was left there for you to find. In a way,
yes.
You'll get what you need. Just look around. Be creative. Is it stashed in the rafters? something like that.
Right.
So okay, we're good. We're getting very close to the end. I got to go all the way back to this. Was this one here?
Then the moment that I do start feeling anxiety in the dream is when I realize I can't finish the dream because I haven't graduated high school.
So, and that moment, that experience came while you were climbing the flagpole, while you were retrieving the tarp material?
While Jessica was building the boat, I had to stop building the boat with her because I had to do math problems on my phone.
Okay. So you didn't actually have a full scene change, a full transition to now you're back at your old high school. Now you're talking to a teacher, but you just had you had your process interrupted by this sudden shift of focus to an unfinished task in a way.
Yes.
And not more than an unfinished task. There's something that's been noodling around. Like I said, this is where we're going because, of course, it's at the very end of the dream. And I'm like, let's just throw this out there. Part of it was for me to say very often there's a concept, the idea of not finishing, but it's specifically not finishing school, not completing the process of learning something. And what that does is it makes you prepared to then implement that learning. So where am I going with that in this one? You may have come to this point in your dream where it's time to build a boat, and Jane Marie doesn't know how to build a boat. And so you actually can't do that. And you're like, shit, this is just like the way I feel when I realize I never finished high school. I'm going to stop right there. And you having a feeling or thoughts about that concept of, I don't know how to do this thing. And it gives me that feeling of like, I'm unprepared to graduate. I'm unprepared to move on, to implement knowledge.
It was more that I felt like I had to step out of something exciting. It was like, okay, I'm doing something. It's super exciting. Oh, damn it. I have to do my homework.
So it wasn't actually a feeling of like, I'm ignorant. I don't understand the next step in a process. I don't know how to implement this thing.
At no point. I mean, I don't know how to build a boat, but at no point in the dream did I have that concern.
Okay. That's interesting. So that's getting us. So now we start looking about. We've explored this whole thing, and it could be okay. Well, one way to address this is this happened last night. So is there any circumstance in your life you're going through right now where there's some kind of a natural problem that you didn't cause, and you need to figure out how to communicate it, and maybe it's a physical problem, and the avatar of physical ability came to you and gave you the ability to find a boat to deal with the problem, some means of conveyance or a problem-solving technique. You dealing with any like specifically physical issues lately? It could be with anything. Did you say you're pregnant currently?
I am pregnant. Yes, I am pregnant. I'm almost 17 weeks, and I have a girl. But I have had very little dreams about that. Actually, that's not true. I think that I've had some dreams where I've told people that I was pregnant. But that was always like me-centered. It was always centered around like my identity, like, oh, I'm pregnant now. I haven't had a lot of dreams where I've really communed with the consciousness of a baby.
Sure.
So,
well, I'm more thinking about
I have that to do. Yeah.
What brought to my mind when I'm thinking what's a physical. What's a situation that needs
moving.
Moving. Gotcha,
I have had to move. Yeah. So less than 2 weeks ago, I drove from Houston, Texas to Michigan, and my husband is currently in New York because of a job. And the reason that I'm not in New York is because I don't want to live in New York with 3 dogs.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
So yeah, and it's just he is paying $1,800 for 1 bedroom in a 5-bedroom apartment. And I'm like, I'm not, I'm living with my mom right now.
Can't live like that. I never could. Yeah. No, that's, whoa.
Yeah, that's not.
So expensive. Everyone's crammed in right there. Well, go ahead.
So he was looking for a really long time, like he really was like, this is the best deal that I can get and still like be in the area and go to my job. And I'm like, look, it's still an awful deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, there's very much a physical problem in that, a physical spatial problem, separation. Yeah. Well, then how would
it makes sense that he would be absent from it. And then also, I think that I told you at the beginning that like one of the main things that I had to do at the beginning of COVID, I graduated in 2020, was to decide to not get a PhD, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't occur to me until this conversation, but it makes sense that I would have these recurring dreams about not finishing high school as a displacement for like not continuing my education. So that seems like something, an abstraction. Weird that it's focused on high school and not college, but that's the main thing.
It could be. And then if we lean into the kind of the Freudian side of things, the displacement would be is maybe you're not really ready to fully confront not pursuing higher education further. So you shift it back a little bit to something you actually did complete. But you can imagine what it'd be like if you didn't, and it's a little safer with that at that distance. So there's that possibility too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Here, you want to go? Did you have something to say?
Oh, I'm just rambling still and thinking about it. And we may have hit upon a very real and true element of it. I'm not sure it is or it isn't, but I'll say it this way: is I'm not sure that's all it really represents. I just because a lot of these things they're very rarely so specific. They're usually a little bit fuzzier, a little more conceptual in terms of, because you were, did you only start having these dreams about not finishing high school since you decided not to pursue your...
Yeah, I don't have an exact time, but it's like not something... I used to have dreams about drowning in a flood when I was in high school. I remember those dreams.
Okay.
These dreams about not finishing high school are very recent, past couple of years.
And and they only started after you decided not to pursue the PhD, or...
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Well then maybe it is. I was going to say, again, the counterfactual. If you've been having these dreams for 10 years and you only a year ago decided not to go further in post-secondary, they wouldn't be related. But this very well could be. This very well could be. And it did seem like something resonated with you of like, I really don't want to think about how I didn't do something I thought I wanted to do. Like, were you, was it kind of a natural confluence of events that made it more difficult to pull that off, or, impossible lifestyle wise?
No, I didn't do well on my like graduating project, and I couldn't get the recommendations that I needed. I didn't think that I had good recommendations, so I ended up pulling my apps, and I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to do with my life? No one's going to accept me into the programs that I want. And even still, like there's kind of just like problems in higher ed right now, because like there's always been this issue with the ivory tower, but people are so far like up their own butts in the literature department in specific that like
only slightly
they can't. Yeah. Oh gosh, it's like really bad. It's like it's kind of like working in a cult. Like, I don't know how to describe. Okay, so like we're talking about feminism. Mm-hmm. I know that you have to go soon. We just tell you really briefly, okay. Yeah,
I could imagine having critiques of feminism would not go over well with certain academic types, right?
So one lady had a picture of a baby on her door, and I walked in and I said, oh, is that your grandchild? Because she was old. And she got really, really quiet. And then she said, come with me. And she led me down a hallway to another faculty, and she started screaming. She pointed at the door of the department chair and she said, you see this room? It's almost always filled by a man, and most of the time an idiot man. When you came into my office, you didn't ask me about my work. You asked me about my reproductive capabilities. You only like me because of my uterus.
Wow.
She screamed at me. She screamed at me in front. She led me out of the hallway to be in front of other people, and she screamed at me and humiliated me. Wow. And it was really difficult to like continue this.
That's unbelievable. A bitch is a picture of a baby on your door. What the fuck?
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. Okay, so this seemed rational to her because she was so offended that I asked about the picture of the baby on her door.
Yeah.
So she sent me an email about it, and then she sent me another email about it. And so eventually I reported it to the like Office of Respect or something, and I was like, I need help with this woman. And the Office of Respect wrote back like, when there's interpersonal conflicts where both sides are legitimate, normally what we do is we do mediated communication. So they invited me and invited her, and they were like, okay, well, you shouldn't have asked about that picture of the baby on her door. She shouldn't have gotten as angry. Let's just shake it off. So the entire like organization like thought that was like appropriate and proportional and okay. Like the entire like cultural milieu was like that level of feminist. Okay. So,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
I don't know why I got that. Anyway, the point is that that's the type of environment that I was operating in. And I decided to not do a PhD, even though I
Yeah.
probably would have liked being able to just like read because that's because I like reading anyway. And
Yeah.
I've made significantly more money than like people who get PhDs do in their 40s, like in my 20s. So it's
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I consciously, my own story real quick. I consciously chose not to get into, to go for a master's and hang out a shingle and go into private practice. Because what I was doing was, in first in adolescent psych and then in inpatient psychiatric, I enjoyed it. I was able to, it matched a skill set that I had in terms of, being a little on the autistic side. I suffer less burnout with dealing with people with emotional trauma. I can just be present and calm and help them through, hold their hand while they suffer. And it doesn't hurt me as physically, viscerally, emotionally as much as it does other people. So very, very, very proud of that. And also, it was a lateral move financially. I'm like, I don't really need this. And then, I hit upon the dream thing and I'm like, I'll just teach myself. I mean, I don't need a formal education. What am I going to do? Get a PhD in dreams? I mean, whatever. So I don't think higher and higher and higher levels of degrees and accolades and titles is necessary. I think if you can just show what you've got by doing it, do what you do and make a living at it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you very clearly demonstrate the complexity of your thoughts by the things that you say, right? And you really don't need to have a degree to show that the things that you're saying are legitimate, because like they're self-evidently interesting things, like the thing you were saying about like the cult leader being a necromancer. You said a couple other things that were really smart. So
Thank you.
Yeah. I agree completely.
I got something to share. Yeah, trying to prove it.
Yeah, I mean, you do, and like the things that you share already prove the point. That's my point. But anyway, we were getting into that.
Yeah. Well, now that you're mentioning the idea of the academic environment and how I want to say toxic because the word's overused, but the idea of it feels what popped into my head was the idea of fighting forces of nature. Like I'm really going to wade into this and turn the tide myself. I'm going to get swept away by the flood. Maybe I need a boat to get the hell out of here. All of this could be very, very intimately related with that. And then it's like, well, now what? What do I do? How do I, I solve the immediate problem of survival. I need to not drown. I have a boat, but that's not good enough. I also need to go to, I have to interact with civilization and I have to gather provisions. And then, the ending of the dream, the idea of being interrupted by unfinished business from the past, specifically this returning theme. Can you tell me a little bit about other dreams you did in the very beginning? And we're gonna try and this is why I've gone 4.5 hours with someone before. But you were talking about you've had these dreams before, and they all take place in slightly different settings, so to speak. And I don't find that surprising at all, because if it's a recurrent problem, it's going to recur over multiple different kinds of settings. More thematic. What do I say? Thematic's the wrong. I think you get what I'm saying. Anyway, I don't need to belabor that. So maybe you could say a little bit more about other dreams where you've hit a certain point of action in the dream, or steps in a process and been interrupted by this realization.
You know what? Actually, I have a real problem writing stories that conclude. I'm a very good writer, and exposition comes so naturally to me. And when I'm like walking my dogs, I'll just think about something and I'll come up with a story really naturally. But I have a hard time with them concluding, and it does seem like I'm like, oh damn, I haven't finished high school right at the point where the dream could have concluded. And I didn't think about that until you asked me that question. But in terms of like my conscious thoughts.
So it seems like now that you think about it, the I didn't finish high school comes more towards the end of dreams, where maybe something else should have happened. And there's that's fascinating. You say that too. So that if we conceptualize this as a what am I trying to say? There's a face palm. There's a hit in your head of like this. I should be able to do this. What did I never finish high school? Come on. It's something as simple as that, where it's like you're so far removed from that where you're like, oh my God, I thought high school was hard when I was in it. Now I realize how easy it was by comparison. This is actually some people might even go lower and say, would you never finish kindergarten? Because we look at that as more insulting, but high school is at least at like, okay, that's the beginning of now I know the basics, and I'm going to begin on a journey to learn. It's like foundational stuff. So does that make sense where I'm going with this idea of like, there's a certain layer of foundational information you're supposed to have. And if you never even get that much, you're screwed, and so having these representations of failing to learn something basic that should have been nailed down before you launched another adventure. I'll stop there for a second. I don't know if you have thoughts.
Yeah. The idea of high school being like in the middle of advanced education and basic education.
Mm-hmm. The transition point.
That's a transition point. Maybe high school is the thing that distinguishes between like people who just kind of think and people who really, really think about something. Maybe like, I don't know. I guess that like, maybe it comes back to the fact that people are so anxious about, I'm sorry. I think that I do have to go soon.
We'll wrap it up in just a couple of minutes.
Sure.
We'll get it done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, just the final thing I suppose I would say on that is that just to reinforce your point too is like I don't see people with a degree as better than people without or high school, but there is a dividing line between that's the point where people separate from I'm going to work with my head and I'm going to work with my hands. I don't see either one as better, but you need different kinds of specialty training for each. And so there's, it's very much that bare minimum that everybody gets before they decide how they're going to proceed in life in general. But I think we're both out of time. So, I mean, at least we got a good discussion about it. We actually described some things that are relevant to you. You're like, that makes sense to me in my life. We got enough answers to leave you with some things to think about.
Do. Thank you so much, Benjamin. This was wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, let me just do the wrapping up stuff. Let's send people to your website and all that good stuff. This has been our friend Jane Marie Aure from Lansing, Michigan area, and you can find her at janemarieaure.com. Link in the description below. She is a psychological writer and a deep thinker, as we've come to appreciate. Her book is Screens and the Ego, a meditation on Gen Z, well received by New York Times bestselling authors. So she's got that going for her, which is nice. For my part, if you would kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, always need more volunteer dreamers. 17 currently available works of historical dream literature, the most recent, The Fabric of Dreams by Catherine Taylor Craig. All this and more, of course, at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, including MP3 versions of this podcast. Also, benjaminthedreamwizard.locals.com, trying to build a community there. It's attached to my Rumble account, free to join. And that's the housekeeping. Jane Marie, thank you for the talk. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. And everybody out there, thanks for watching.